Welcome back to America's Fractured Politics. I'm your host, Mark Mansour. Today I want to talk about a threat that most Americans rarely think about, but that could affect their daily lives in a matter of seconds. Not through missiles, not through tanks, but through computer networks. For decades, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been building a cyber warfare capability specifically designed to confront more powerful countries like the United States. And unlike countries such as China or Russia, Iran's approach to cyber warfare has never been about dominating the entire digital battlefield. Instead, Iran has chosen a different strategy: disruption. The goal is not necessarily to destroy the United States. The goal is to impose costs, create uncertainty, and retaliate against geopolitical adversaries in ways that are difficult to predict and even harder to stop. Cyber warfare allows a country with fewer resources to challenge a much stronger military power. It's the ultimate asymmetric weapon, and over the past 2 decades, Iran has invested heavily in building the tools needed to deploy it. Much of Iran's cyber activity is coordinated through the powerful state institutions like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Ministry of Intelligence of Iran. But these government agencies rarely act alone. Instead, they rely on a sprawling ecosystem of hackers who operate with varying degrees of state oversight. Some of these groups function almost like contractors. Others are tightly connected to government intelligence services. Together, they form a network of cyber operators and cybersecurity experts, referred to as Advanced Persistent Threats, or APTS. These are not amateur hackers. These are long-term intrusion teams. They infiltrate networks quietly, sometimes months or even years before launching an attack. They study the systems they penetrate, they map out vulnerabilities, and they wait. Among the most well-known Iranian cyber groups are organizations that security researchers call APT-33, APT-34, APT-35, and a group known as Muddy Water. Each of these units specializes in slightly different tactics. Some focus on industrial espionage, stealing proprietary technology from companies. Others focus on credential harvesting, which means tricking employees into revealing their usernames and passwords. Still others specialize in destructive malware designed to disable networks entirely. But they all share the same basic playbook. First, gain access, then stay hidden, then wait for the right moment. And that moment usually comes when geopolitical tensions rise. One of the most concerning areas of Iranian cyber activity involves critical infrastructure inside the United States. For years, American cybersecurity agencies have warned that Iran hackers are probing the systems that run the physical backbone of modern society. We're talking about energy facilities, pipelines, manufacturing plants, and water treatment systems. Many of these systems rely on what are known as operational technologies, industrial control systems that were designed decades ago. At the time they were built, cybersecurity was not a priority. These systems were meant to be efficient, not secure, and that makes them attractive targets. A small incident in Pennsylvania recently demonstrated how this kind of attack might unfold in the real world. Hackers associated with an Iranian group calling itself Cyber Avengers managed to compromise programmable logic controllers used by a municipal water authority. These controllers regulate monitoring systems that manage water pressure and other operational functions. Fortunately, the facility switched to manual control before any serious damage occurred. But the incident proved something important. Iranian cyber operators had successfully penetrated real-world infrastructure systems inside the United States. That should concern everyone, because in a broader conflict scenario, as we are facing right now, similar tactics could be used against a wide range of targets. Electrical substations could suddenly go offline, disrupting regional power grids. Pipeline control systems could be manipulated to halt fuel deliveries or trigger safety shutdowns. Liquefied natural gas export facilities could experience system failures that interrupt shipments overseas. Even water treatment plants could face operational disruptions if their monitoring systems were compromised. Now, it's important to understand that something about cyber warfare. The objective is not always catastrophic destruction. Sometimes temporary disruption is enough. In a complex modern society, small failures can cascade rapidly. A regional power outage during a period of extreme weather could quickly turn into a humanitarian crisis. A breakdown in logistics systems could disrupt food supply chains. In other words, cyber attacks can create instability far beyond the original target. Iran has already demonstrated its willingness to target American financial institutions. Roughly 15 years ago, Iranian hackers launched a massive campaign against the U.S. banking sector. The attacks relied on distributed denial of service operations, DDoS attacks, that flooded bank servers with enormous volumes of traffic. The goal was simple: overwhelm the system until it stopped working. Online banking platforms across the country suddenly went offline. Customers could not access their accounts, transactions slowed or stopped altogether. More than 40 financial institutions were affected. The attacks did not steal money or destroy financial records, but that wasn't the point. The point was disruption. Banks were forced to spend enormous sums strengthening their cyber defenses. Infrastructure had to be rebuilt. Emergency systems had to be deployed. And the episode revealed something that policymakers had long feared. The digital financial system was vulnerable. Iran's capabilities have evolved significantly since those early attacks. Today, cyber operators can potentially target payment processors, stock exchangers, and financial clearing systems that allow banks to settle transactions with one another. Even brief outages in these systems could undermine confidence in financial markets, especially if they occurred during a period of geopolitical tension. Another tool that Iranian cyber operators have used with increasing frequency is ransomware. Ransomware attacks work by infiltrating a network, encrypting critical data, and demanding payment in exchange for restoring access. Hospitals, universities, municipal governments, and private corporations have all fallen victim to these attacks. The initial entry point is often surprisingly simple. A phishing email, an employee receives a message that appears to come from a trusted colleague or organization. They click a link, they enter their password, and suddenly the attacker is inside the system. In a geopolitical conflict, ransomware could easily evolve into something more dangerous. Instead of demanding payment, attackers could simply arrest data or permanently disable networks. Hospitals could lose access to patient records. Shipping companies could see logistics systems collapse. Local governments could lose vital administrative databases. Because many of these institutions operate on aging digital infrastructure, with limited cybersecurity budgets, they are particularly vulnerable to sophisticated state-sponsored attacks. Even as cybersecurity defenses improve, there is still a long way to go. Iran has also invested heavily in cyber espionage. Iranian hacking groups frequently target journalists, academics, diplomats, think tank analysts, and government officials. These campaigns are often built around carefully crafted phishing operations. The attackers impersonate colleagues, research institutions, or media organizations. The goal is to trick the recipient into clicking a malicious link or entering login credentials. Once hackers gain access to email accounts or cloud storage systems, they can quietly monitor communications for months or even years. Documents are copied, contact lists are harvested, strategic insights are collected. And eventually, those materials can be weaponized. This is where cyber espionage intersects with information warfare. Stolen emails and documents can be leaked at carefully chosen moments in order to embarrass political figures or inflame public debate. These so-called hack and leak operations have become a hallmark of modern cyber conflict. The objective is rarely to change the outcome of a single election. The goal is to erode trust. When private communications appear online, they often trigger conspiracy theories, misinformation campaigns, and partisan outrage. Over time, these leaks can deepen political polarization and undermine public confidence in democratic institutions, which is exactly what is happening today. Iran has also conducted coordinated disinformation campaigns across social media platforms. Networks of fake accounts pose as activists, journalists, or ordinary citizens, while spreading narratives favorable to Iran's geopolitical interests. These campaigns often attempt to inflame existing tensions inside the United States, encouraging conflict between political factions, amplifying extremist rhetoric, and spreading misleading information. Modern digital platforms make these operations surprisingly effective. A relatively small number of coordinated accounts can generate enormous reach if their messages are amplified through algorithms and shared by real users. And once information enters the online ecosystem, it can be extraordinarily difficult to contain. Corporate espionage represents another major component of Iranian cyber activity. Energy companies, aerospace manufacturers, telecommunications providers, and technology firms have all been targeted by Iranian intrusion teams. In many cases, the objective is straightforward: steal intellectual property. Hackers infiltrate corporate networks, locate valuable research or proprietary technology, and quietly exfiltrate the data. For companies competing in global markets, the loss of sensitive information can represent billions of dollars in economic damage. But in a geopolitical crisis, those same intrusions can evolve into something more dangerous. Malware already embedded within corporate systems could be activated to disrupt production lines, sabotage supply chain logistics, or leak confidential communications. For industries tied to national security, energy infrastructure, aerospace engineering, satellite communications, the consequences could extend far beyond economic losses. They can affect national security. The logic behind Iran's cyber strategy is relatively straightforward. Iran cannot compete directly with the United States in conventional military terms. The United States still possesses the most powerful military in the world. But cyber warfare changes the equation. Cyber operations are relatively inexpensive compared to traditional military programs. They can be conducted remotely, often thousands of miles away from the target. And perhaps most importantly, they operate in a realm where attribution is difficult. Governments can deny responsibility. They can hide behind layers of proxies, contractors, and independent hacker groups. But when geopolitical tensions escalate, as they are doing now, cyber attacks become a powerful tool of retaliation. A successful cyber attack does not need to destroy infrastructure or cause mass casualties to achieve its objective. Temporary disruption can be enough. Financial uncertainty, infrastructure instability, political confusion. These pressures can ripple across society. As tensions between the United States and Iran continue to rise, many cybersecurity analysts believe that Iranian cyber campaigns will play a central role in retaliation against American interests. Iran does not possess the largest cyber force in the world, but it has built one that is highly focused on exploiting vulnerabilities in technologically dependent societies like the United States. In a digitally connected economy, systems that people assume will always work, electricity, banking networks, hospitals, communication platforms, supply chains, can fail in ways that cascade rapidly. And Iran has spent years preparing the tools that could make that happen. Which brings us to the present moment. The possibility that these cyber capabilities could be deployed has increased significantly as tensions have escalated. And unfortunately, the United States may be less prepared than it should be. Over the past several years, key cyber defense initiatives have been weakened or neglected under the administration of Donald Trump. Funding cuts, institutional disruptions, the dismantling of parts of the federal cybersecurity architecture have reduced the government's ability to coordinate large-scale responses to cyber threats. That leaves much of the responsibility in the hands of private companies and local institutions, hospitals, energy utilities, banks, technology firms. Many of these organizations are improving their cybersecurity posture, but progress is uneven. Some sectors remain dangerously exposed. Social media companies represent another area of concern. Platforms operated by companies like Meta play a central role in shaping the information environment in which cyber influence operations unfold. And yet these companies have often struggled, or in some cases failed, and in many cases refused to prevent coordinated disinformation campaigns from operating on their networks. The result is an ecosystem where foreign cyber actors can manipulate narratives, spread propaganda, and deepen political divisions inside the United States, all while remaining largely invisible to the average user. We are at a particularly sensitive moment. The damage already done in the current geopolitical crisis could motivate the Iranian regime to expand its cyber retaliation campaign. And cyber warfare operates largely in the shadows. You rarely see the attackers. You rarely know when they are inside your systems. Often the first sign of a problem is when something stops working. A power grid goes down, a hospital network locks up, a banking system freezes. At that point, the damage is already underway. The uncomfortable reality is that political decisions made today can unleash consequences that unfold quietly across invisible digital battlefields. The escalation of tensions with Iran may end up activating cyber tools that have been quietly prepared for years. And if that happens, the cost will not be borne primarily by politicians or governments. They will be borne by ordinary people, by Americans who suddenly find that the systems they rely on every day, electricity, healthcare, financial services, communications, are no longer functioning as expected. Cyber warfare is often described as the battlefield of the future, but the truth is it's already here. The question now is whether the United States will recognize the scale of the threat before those tools are fully unleashed. Because once cyber conflict begins in earnest, shutting it down is extraordinarily difficult, and the consequences can spread faster than any conventional weapon ever could. But Donald Trump doesn't care, and this threatens the well-being of every American. This has been America's Fractured Politics. Thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm Mark Mansour.